Are you ready? So while I'm waiting for Hadestown to finish dropping in its entirety, my jam and my obsession has been Toby Marlowe and Lucy Moss's SiX. Here's the deal with SiX. It was based on the lives of the wives of King Henry VIII. Catherine of Aragon, Anne Boleyn, Jane Seymour, Anne of Cleves, Catherine Howard, and Catherine Parr. And specifically that famous little rhyme about them. Divorced, beheaded, died, divorced, beheaded, survived. And they have a little bit of a problem with that. This isn't exactly a traditional musical. Like, there is no fourth wall. Instead, it's presented as the girl group SiX's Divorced Beheaded live concert tour, and they are using their performance to address the audience and say, hey, which of us suffered the most under Henry VIII and therefore deserves to lead the band? And this goes on for, I'd say, about 70% of the musical, until they're like, you know what you've been doing? You've been judging us the way history has always judged us, and you know what? That's not cool, and that's not feminist, so we're gonna just take that table and upend it, and we are going to finish this on a girl power anthem. And it is great, and it is feminist, and I love it, and I want desperately to see it. I have not bootlegged it yet because I have some standards that I force myself to stick to. Watch me cave any day now. Anyway, there is one big misconception about SiX that I hear get brought up entirely way too much. And that is comparisons to Alexander Hamilton. Yeah, so 3 years ago it was great to be obsessed with Hamilton, but the longer it spins on, the more I get tired of Hamilton, because it seems like everything now has to be inspired by Hamilton. And it's great that Hamilton, you know, got the conversation started on diversity and what roles we allow what races to be cast as, but that doesn't mean you need to compare every single thing that has even a whiff of colorblind or color-conscious casting to Hamilton. I mean, I don't remember seeing comparisons to Hamilton with Head Over Heels or Hadestown or basically... Look, the point is, SiX is not like Hamilton. I get that it trips some people up because A, there are people of color in the cast, B, the music has a modern sounding influence, and C, it's about historical figures, but those are some really, really loose, arbitrary characteristics. You could take a colorblind cast production of Les Mis and technically make that same argument, because Les Mis has some very, very 80s music in it, and it's... I don't buy it. And I think at the core you need to look at the thesis statements of what is this production trying to achieve. And with Hamilton, the argument was, it is a portrait of America as it was performed by America the way it is now. Whereas SiX is more about reappropriating and reframing a history in a more feminist lens, telling another side of the story. Narrative is a big part of both of these, but it's really not the same endgame. Hamilton is just about telling the narrative. SiX is about telling the narrative in a very specific way. Stop comparing SiX to Hamilton. And Toby Marlowe and Lucy Moss have gone on the record. They have stated that Hamilton had no influence whatsoever on them writing SiX. So I'm like, can we stop comparing it, especially in America? Like, if you look up the criticisms and the reviews for the Chicago production that's happening right now at Chicago Shakespeare Festival, most of them will mention Hamilton in some form, and it is annoying. Like, was it like this after Phantom came out and every show was trying to copy it or something? I don't know. That is not cricket. That is simply not cricket. So in addition to reframing the narrative away from male gaze, SiX is also heavily inspired by the music industry and what images, what iconography we associate with what female music icons. So each queen has an aesthetic and a sound that is based in a pop star. So let's just go down the line, shall we? Catherine of Aragon is very based on Beyonce. Like, hold up Lemonade era Beyonce, where, you know, Jay-Z was cheating on her, because that was basically Catherine of Aragon's whole deal. Henry would just cheat on her left and right. He had at least one confirmed bastard, he had multiple mistresses, and then, in somewhat of a kind of rude twist on Beyonce's whole irreplaceable, he did in fact replace Catherine with Anne Boleyn. And Catherine's song, No Way, is just her sticking to her guns and saying, I am not putting up with your Yeah, Catherine of Aragon does not swear, and she will let you know it. And it is absolutely great. So she has a lot of fun rapid fire verses and then some great instrumental breaks, and it is just really, really great. And I admit, I was not originally on the Aragon hype train, but ever since The Spanish Princess started airing on Stars, I have felt sorrier and sorrier for her, because that show is a steaming pile of garbage that is honestly worse than Reign when it comes to just the sheer amount of taking a dump on history. So bad, and yet I cannot look away. Anybody who thinks Philippa Gregory is any kind of reliable historian, or that Stars is doing anything feminist with their Philippa Gregory series, needs to get their brain examined, because no, it's historical character assassination on, like, so many fronts. Moving on. I'm that Berlin girl and I'm up next. Talk about character assassination by Philippa Gregory. I cannot believe I sat through The Other Berlin Girl for Natalie Portman. There are some things that even she can't make worth it. So bad. Anyway, Anne Boleyn is inspired by the aesthetic and sound of Lily Allen, especially early Lily Allen, and you're probably thinking of, you know, fuck you. Or at least that's what I'm doing, because I don't really know any of Lily Allen's other tracks, and the last I heard of her, she was getting in trouble for, like, having black women twerking on a car or something. And so the angle that they decide to take for Anne Boleyn is that she wasn't coming to court just to, you know, try and steal Catherine of Aragon's man. She didn't plan to do that. She was kind of pushed into it by her father, who had done the same thing to her sister, though Mary Boleyn never really gets mentioned. And, well, basically she knew that she could either be a mistress and potentially have her life ruined, or she could play the long game. And, well, playing the long game didn't end up working out for her, but her attitude is very interesting, because it's like, I didn't mean to hurt anyone. She literally says that. And, you know, it's interesting to look at the scholarship and the media portrayals of Anne throughout the years, because you get so many different interpretations of her based on how we feel about her, but there's always been that, you know, sexual edge, that idea that she's the homewrecker, that she, in some way or another, did have a deserved reputation as a temptress, which is really not fair. And I think that Marlowe and Moss do a good job of addressing that. I think they maybe overlook a little too much things she did that weren't connected to Henry, but then I remembered that this is about pointing out who suffered the most. So you can't really tout Anne's accomplishments if you're trying to argue that she had it the worst. These writers are so much smarter than I gave them credit for when I first was listening to this. It blows my mind. Also, Anne Boleyn is now, like, one of the most popular characters. Like, take a look at the West End Live production. Yeah, everybody is singing along to her. It's pretty incredible. And I don't necessarily approve of, like, fandom favoritism, and I never have, and I never will, but it is what it is, and I'm not gonna bash anybody for loving her. I mean, look at her, she's adorable. Next, please. Jane Seymour, the only one he chooses. Jane Seymour is inspired by Sia and Adele mostly, you know, the singer-writers, songstresses who just pour out their emotions out of these big, bombastic voices that will soar over notes, and she gets quite a song. Like, I absolutely love it, and if I ever did, you know, like an EP or anything, it would definitely be on there. Heart of Stone it's called, but well, so keeping in mind again that we are still going with I suffered because of Henry and this is why, Jane Seymour's entire thing is based pretty much entirely around I loved him and I didn't get to be with him, and also I didn't get to be with my son because I died in childbirth or from complications of childbirth. And Jane is the one I kind of have the hardest time wrapping my head around from a feminist perspective because, well, it's not wrong to want a husband and babies and all that. That is fine. It's more that at times it seems like she's bordering on excusing his behavior and justifying what is kind of abuse. Like, she literally has a line where she says that she doesn't care if he stops loving her and she falls out of favor if she doesn't have a son, because she still loves him. And I'm like, oh honey, that's kind of like what happens when you're an abuse victim. I can't tell if it's sincere or not, or if it's just, you know, another part of the competition, which they hint might have actually been planned from the entire start. I honestly, I don't know, and I think that's because on the studio cast recording, Natalie Paris, who is also still playing Jane Seymour on the West End, she's just so sincere and she sells it so well that it leaves me conflicted, and that's both, I think, a good thing and a bad thing. It is definitely sad that she didn't get to see her son grow up. So yeah, there is that. Sorry, Jane. And now we're going to just move it down the line and let us talk about the, for lack of a better term, big-lipped alligator moment. The next moment is just such tonal whiplash that it is honestly stunning, and that is the House of Holbein. So for those of you who don't know, Hans Holbein was this painter and inventor who was employed by Henry VIII. And after Jane Seymour died and he spent a good amount of time mourning, he basically sent Hans Holbein all over Europe painting the portraits of potential new wives, because you got one son, but heir and a spare. You need an heir and a spare, especially because your first two wives' children, who are both girls, have been declared bastards because, well, you're Henry VIII and you're a massive asshole. This song just, it's German techno that seems to come right out of nowhere, and it does nothing except drag the old beauty practices of the day, and it is glorious and hilarious, and I love it. I love it so much. So next we get into if you want to be German and nasty, is based on Rihanna and Nicki Minaj, which means she just oozes swagger, and it is fantastic, and I love her, and it also kind of ignores the premise of their supposed competition because, well, her song, Get Down, is basically an ode to how she made out like a bandit after Henry VIII divorced her. It's less about the marriage and more about how, well, even though she doesn't get the word survived in the rhyme, she did survive, and she did very well for herself. They do apparently, according to my friends who have seen the show, cover some of the more unsavory parts of her marriage to Henry in dialogue, but it's not in the song, and it doesn't really need to be, because Get Down, if nothing else, Get Down was made to be a song that's used for like lip sync battles on RuPaul's Drag Race. That needs to happen, and also I would love to see at a future production Anne of Cleves played by Peppermint, because Toby Marlowe and Lucy Moss have said that they would be open to anybody really playing the queens as long as, you know, they're willing to present as female in the aesthetics for the purposes of the performance. And, you know, trans women are women, so there's nothing wrong with Peppermint playing Anne of Cleves. It would be awesome. Okay, so,
Break out your ears on the Catherine who lost her head.
I'm going to talk about Catherine Howard in the vague at first because there is inevitably going to be triggering material. So first, the simplified stuff out of the way. Catherine Howard is based on Britney Spears and Ariana Grande. Ariana Grande, particularly for the aesthetics, especially her high, gorgeous pink ponytail. But most of what they're talking about has to do with, you know, the sexualization of pop stars who were, you know, young when they started out. Very, very young. And so here's the official trigger warning and the time code if you want to skip it, because I am going to be talking about rape, I am going to be talking about child molestation, and just sexual assault in general. So there's the thing. For those of you who are still with us, Catherine Howard's song, All You Want to Do, is basically working her way through the men who abused her and molested her, starting with Henry Mannix when she was 13, and he was her 20-something, 30-something music master, grooming her and molesting her. And then we move into Francis Derham, the man who allegedly might have been her husband in history. They say that they called each other husband and wife, but yeah, he also was molesting her. It's bad. And then Henry VIII, and by the time you get to Thomas Culpeper, Catherine has been expressing kind of this disillusionment with the idea that these men she knows only ever seem to see her as a sex object. Like, as they get closer to her, the more she realizes that the only thing they want to do to her is use her. And so when she gets to Thomas Culpeper, she thinks that they are simply going to be friends, and then it's not true. Because like everyone else, all Culpeper has seen her as is a sex object, and she realizes with some horror that that's the only thing she can be, and it is absolutely heartbreaking to watch, because you are basically watching a young girl evolve from understanding being groomed and being desired by creepy older men as something to want, to the true horror of what it actually is. And it's awful, and you just have to feel for her because it's really bad. Poor girl. So it's at this point in the show that they're all arguing, and our final queen steps up to the mic.
I'm a survivor, Catherine Parr.
So Catherine Parr is inspired by Alicia Keys, and I absolutely love her song, but I have a teeny tiny problem with how Thomas Seymour is kind of presented as like this white knight romantic ideal, when I happen to know from history that he would go on to molest Elizabeth Tudor while his wife was pregnant. Yeah, Catherine Parr did marry Thomas Seymour after Henry died, and she was very happy until she found out he was molesting her stepdaughter. Anyway, Catherine Parr is the one to kind of present this thesis that because of Henry, they are known to history. They would only be known to history because Henry married all of them, but it's also kind of awful that they are solely defined by their relationship to him. And so her song, I Don't Need Your Love, is about admitting that, yeah, I'm famous because of you, but I deserve to be famous because of these other things. And she has everybody join her for that briefly, and it is absolutely wonderful, and I love it. And so the finale is called SiX, and it starts with what they call a cheeky little history rite, where they imagine what would happen if things had gone happily for them. Aragon goes to a nunnery where she becomes an amazing gospel singer, and takes the poem Henry sent her, Greensleeves, and puts it on a beat that gets her a deal with Shakespeare. I'm still trying to work out the timeline on that, but whatever, it's cool. Jane, she and Henry are apparently still together, and they've had like a massive amount of children, enough that she makes a Sound of Music joke and then a god-awful pun.
You could perhaps call us the Tudor contract. I'm just kidding. We call the roiling stones.
Oh, Jane. So Cleves' thing is just going to the House of Holbein and partying for the rest of forever. Catherine Howard ditches her abusers and just becomes a pop star in her own right. And Catherine Parr finds everybody and brings them together for one epic girl group. It's just such a touching thing to see sisterhood, where these 6 women who have, in one way or another, been pitted against each other are seen in a unified front. It's absolutely heartwarming. And thus the show ends, but they get one more song in the form of what's called the Mega Six. So you remember that video I was using at the start? That's the Mega Six. They invite people to take their phones out and dance while they perform a medley of all the songs that they have done up to this point. And it is just one big old dance party full of chaotic energy. There are about 300 different Mega Six videos circulating YouTube right now, where you can see the alternates who take on different roles at different times. You can see all these different performances from all these different angles. It is absolutely fantastic. So if you are in London or Chicago, I advise you to try and see SiX while you can. If you are in Boston, there will be a production coming in August, September, and fingers crossed for a Broadway production, because this is such a good show. It is such a good show. It deserves all the Tonys. And there's one other thing I want to mention. So it's a tired, stupid joke that Broadway is something that gay men like, but what fascinates me about SiX is that, from what I have experienced, the majority of the fandom is not only female, but queer. I mean, a lot of that is, I'm queer for this actress, and well, they are all massively talented and gorgeous women, so can't blame them there, but, you know, it's just so interesting to me that of all the musicals, this is the one that I've seen with the biggest queer female following. And that might just be that I'm not on the internet enough, but it's honestly really, really fun to me, and I have met a lot of wonderful people through the SiX fandom and the SiX fandom Discord, and some of us have actually gotten together and we are planning something super, super special, and that is Hidden Thorns, The Untold Lives of the Tudor Wives. It's a project we kind of pitched as a joke, and now we are doing it in earnest. We are making a video series kind of in the vein of the Lizzie Bennet Diaries, and we have put in quite a bit of time and effort to this. We have our cast now, we're in the process of finishing up writing, and we will be launching an Indiegogo campaign soon, so I'm including the links to our Twitter and our Tumblr along with my usual links so that you can come join us and support us if that's something that you would like to do, because if you check out SiX and you like it, I really think that you will like what we're planning on doing. I'm on the team as a writer and sort of a producer. It's a little complicated. We're an amateur production. The Indiegogo campaign is basically just to cover, you know, editing expenses and that sort of thing. Anyway, Hidden Thorns is a labor of love more than anything else. It was born out of love for SiX, out of love for Toby Marlowe and Lucy Moss's creativity, and for these actresses that we adore and these historical figures that we have gotten so attached to. So I'm absolutely thrilled to be a part of it, and I hope that you will be a part of it too.
Merci beaucoup for watching. Please be sure to like, leave comments, share, and subscribe. I would love to make these videos more often, but to do that, I need your help fending off the YouTube algorithm.
And while we're on the subject of supporting things, please come join my Patreon. Depending on what rank you choose, you can get cameo privileges, request privileges, or join my chat room to overthrow the patriarchy. So thank you very much, and I will see you all very soon. A bientôt!